I love this conflict series. I call it my Get a Grip series. We all have what I call conflict identities. It's who we are when our back is up against the wall, when we're faced with really tough interactions, with really contentious people and situations, and just the battles that we face. Conflict can emerge in any and every sphere of our lives. And if we're honest, really honest with ourselves, we even have some internal conflicts. This segment is all about who are you in conflict. It's all about your very unique conflict identity. I want you to listen and to reflect. Don't start arguing with me in the back of your mind. What you may actually find is that by listening and reflecting, you can identify your conflict identity. Remember, most of us are a blend. See if you can be self-aware enough to find your blend. After you have identified your conflict identity or identities, you'll be able to determine whether or not it's serving you well or whether you need to change something. I'm going to review seven styles for you to consider and to help you find your identity. As I review each style, I want you to think about how you typically behave. Don't think about the one-off behaviors. Don't think about the rare occasions. I want you to think about the true you. Remember, few of us are unilaterally one way. We typically are a blend. Now, I have another thing to add to that. When our back is really up against the wall, we revert to whatever is our true natural style. So pay attention to the styles so that you can really identify where you fall. What's your default? All right. Are you the dominator? That's the person who unilaterally induces compliance. They use it to get their way. I think of this style as an armored tank, rolling through a small town and decimating all of the villagers in its path. Dominators, they're not always lacking in diplomacy and tact. Some of them are pretty slick and they can be charming. They can be very charming with their persuasion. However, what they do is that they leave little room for resistance. Think of the dominator as the person who forces compliance. They can do it with charm and charisma, or they can be an out-and-out bully. No matter how they do it, they get their way. If you're not a dominator, you may very well be a bargainer. That's the person who wants to kind of split the difference. You're the person who looks for potential trade-offs. You might be open to taking turns, to allowing the other person to win, and then they owe you one. When I kind of reflect and think about the bargainers, I think that they're reasonable in their negotiations, that they allow other people and themselves to have chits or favors in the bank. That's reasonable. They allow the other person to feel whole to some degree. And this is all predicated on some degree of trust and some degree of mutual respect. Now, none of this is good or bad. It's just a possible approach. Let's say that you are not naturally a dominator or a bargainer. You may be a collaborator. These are the people who are able to and who really want to integrate many different perspectives. They look for alternatives. They look for other views that they can kind of weave into or include in problem solving. You know if you're this style when everybody can win or at least feel satisfied. You're the person who helps everybody look for the similarities in their positions, the common ground. The collaborative style, it really tends to be more flexible. There's also a highly relational element to being a collaborator. Now, there's another style, and that's one that often gets overlooked, but I think it's important, and that is the mutual coexister. That means that rather than trying to resolve the conflict, you simply agree to disagree. Everyone maintains their differences, and that means that they also maintain their grudges sometimes and their misgivings. Sometimes you jointly establish a basis or a foundation for maintaining the status quo. In this style, there really is no managing of perspectives, no merging of perspectives, no integrating of solutions. Everybody just stays in their corner. In other words, nothing changes. It's not denial. Mutual coexisters, they're very clear on their position and that of the other person. They've just made the decision that we're not going to do anything. Up next, the decision ruler. This is the person who sets very clear rules that may be very objective or may be very biased. You got to be in a position of power to be the decision ruler. As you think about it, you really want to understand that the decision ruler determines how differences will be handled. There's a unilateral element in this style. The differences are confronted, and the required changes or the modifications happen because you, the decision ruler, said so. You're able and you're willing to unilaterally stipulate the limits and the releasing of the issue. And then there's the deflector. This is the person who, when they're in conflict, manages to kind of spin it around, to point the finger. This is the person who can levy blame. They have a tough time accepting responsibility, but they can sure point a finger. These are the people who can sometimes even convince us that we're the problem. I have to tell you, my feeling is that these deflectors really lack self-awareness. They're low on emotional intelligence. At the very least, they lack the ability to accept responsibility. Of all of the styles, I gotta tell you, this is the one that irritates me the most. It gets on my nerves. I find this one the most annoying. Finally, there is the non-resistor. As the name implies, you're the person who caves. You don't put up any fight. You allow other people to have their way almost all the time. You acquiesce to the other person's needs or desires or interests, whether you really want to or not. Perhaps you don't resist because you just don't have the energy to fight. Maybe you don't resist because you're afraid, you're timid, or you're intimidated. Whatever the reason, you unilaterally release the issue. You give up all of your personal power. You give up on your desires and your needs. You don't maintain your position. You don't advocate for yourself or really take a stand. You simply give up and give in. Think seriously about what's causing you to react, and then determine how you're going to channel your energy. You have a choice. Hopefully, you'll channel it in a productive direction that enables you to resolve or at least manage the conflict. Think about how best to handle the situation and who your best collaborators can possibly be. Think about optimal solutions for everyone involved. I know that sounds kind of pie in the sky, but just think about it. As we wrap up, remember, there are no value judgments, absolutely none, attached to any of these styles. They just are. They exist. Determine your style and then your style combination. You can become conscious of and you can regulate your reactions in conflict. It does take self-awareness. It does take self-management and self-control. And it also takes the commitment to refine your conflict identity. Whenever you're in a conflict and whoever you are in that conflict, think about who you want to be. Develop the skills to grow into that person and to adapt those styles so that they're truly, truly, truly productive. What is your conflict identity?